Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Player's Take, episode 153. I'm your host, Justin DeSimone, joined by my co-host. He didn't play any video games this week, Montrell Rice. How are you doing, man?
I am tired as fuck. This is like my second day home. My second full day home.
Yeah.
Or actually, this is my first full day home, actually. This is my first full day home.
Okay. Are you
So,
working this week after you got back, or you have the week off?
so, I went to New Orleans this weekend, and then right after immediately coming from New Orleans, I had to go out. I had to drive 2 hours out to a job site, and I was out there for the last 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, shit.
I literally didn't touch my home until
Yesterday.
until Wednesday. Yeah, until yesterday.
Yeah, he
So
lost track of the days. He texts me yesterday and is like, "Hey, I'm not gonna be able to make it for recording tonight, probably." And I was like, "It's Wednesday, dude." And he was like, "Oh shit, you're right. Fuck."
yeah, so
Well, glad you're back. Happy you're back. You did get online yesterday and played with the boys. I did not, but you know, I'm engrossed in a game right now, which we will discuss. Well, Montreal, today, Sony released the PlayStation Wrapped site, and I saw that it wasn't working for you. Did you ever get it working?
I don't know what else I got to do. They said something about turning on your data on the PlayStation 5. I haven't tried it yet, but I don't know what else to do. Like I'm really interested in seeing what I played this year or the
Yeah,
last year and a half.
yeah, yeah. I'd be interested
Because
too because I feel like you played a lot more than I did.
yeah,
I shared my Wrapped out on Twitter, and it was. I think it was less. I'm pretty sure it was less than last year. I'm pretty sure last year I had a lot of hours in on my PlayStation. Like I want to say like 1,500 or something, something
mm-hmm.
like that. This year I only had 950. I mean, only it's still a lot of hours, but I only played 11 games on my PlayStation this year in 950 hours, which means I was averaging nearly 100 hours per game, which is absolutely fucking crazy when you think about it. So I think my top four were Final Fantasy 14, obviously. I think I had like 290 hours, it said in that.
Oh my god, 159 hours in fucking Neo. What the fuck? 290 hours in Final Fantasy 14. Granted, mine's probably would have been like 150
I
if
mean,
it did
look,
PC wrapped.
I beat 3 expansions plus the base game. You know, like, dude, it's a lot of content, man. What do you want from me?
128 hours in Mass Effect, you degenerate.
I mean, that's all 3 games, okay, to be fair. So, let's be nice to me. That one's not that bad. That's actually split between 3 games. And then what was the fourth one? It was Persona 5, wasn't it?
Persona 5, yeah, that was number 2 actually. So your number 1 is Final Fantasy 14, number 2 is Persona 5, number 3 is Mass Effect, only by 2 hours, by the way. And for some reason, they put your number 4 as Neo.
I think it was because it
That's
was split.
159.
I think it was because it was split between PS4 and PS5.
Okay.
But yeah, I played a lot of Neo too, man. So yeah, those 4 games account for well over half of my playtime for the year for sure. And if you think about it, I think yeah, 3 of those. Wait a second, it was Persona 5, yeah, Mass Effect, yeah, Persona 5, Mass Effect trilogy, and like so all of those, most of those hours were played in the first half of the year, through like June, July. So I think the back half of the year, I barely touched my PlayStation, to be honest. Besides like Hades, I think, and then like maybe Guardians of the Galaxy. Other than that, I did not play it very much. So it was a weird year for me. I'm hoping this year will be better for sure. But hey, if you can get it working, I'd love to see your clock or your game time. I know you split your time a lot more than I do though in terms of platform. So but you also play a lot more games than I do too. So still be interested in your list.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out, but I don't know. I don't know who PlayStation hires for like fucking programmers. Do they just hire anybody off the fucking street?
Yes.
Like,
Their networking people are notoriously bad. They've always been bad. It's just really funny. So, but all right. Well, for those of you who haven't listened before, this is our weekly show where we talk about video games, video game news, and other topics pertaining to video games. We post at 6 a.m. Central Time on Fridays on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and your favorite podcast app of choice. And if you'd like to send us a question, please do so at theplayerstake01@gmail.com, or you can send us a question on Twitter at theplayerstake as well, and we will certainly answer it on the show. Montrell, let us start the show like we always do with what we've been playing. Would you like to go first this week, or do you want me?
We can probably actually skip me because I haven't played.
That's
I'm not even gonna joke. I haven't played anything since the last time we been on the podcast.
Yeah.
I've been out of town.
How do you live? How have you lived? Okay, so I'll go quickly. I really only have one game to talk about. I have been playing Dota 2 a little bit, but not much. Not much to say on Dota 2. But I got really heavy into Final Fantasy 14 Endwalker this week, to the point that between last week's recording and this week's recording, I'm almost done with the expansion.
Yeah, you're a degenerate.
I'm level 87. I'm like 40% through 87 maybe. My quest level is now 87 as well. So I'm making my way through. I'm probably going to finish it this weekend. That's my plan right now. We'll see. I have a busy weekend though planned out. So I'm not sure how much time I'm actually going to have to play, but I will try to beat it this week, and I will more than likely have it beaten by the next time we record though. So I'm going to talk about it as quickly as I can. I love this game. I said this before in the summer, and I'm saying it again. I just really like Final Fantasy 14, man. I like the story. I like the characters. They are just this is like gaming comfort food for me at this point. I really enjoy spending time with this cast of characters, the Scions, and all the other characters, not just the Scions, everybody else that's in this game. I just really enjoy this world and this universe. They've done such a great job fostering something really like tangibly powerful with it to me. To the point that I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm so into this fucking game's story that I legitimately enjoy the characters who are just these like kind of sort of throwaway normal people that get involved in the plot for some reason in every expansion. Like there's this guy named Matsuya. He's just a fucking fisherman in one of the zones you go to. And I don't know why, but I really care about him. I really like him. I don't know. The game just gets me, man. I don't know. They got me with this. Like, I'm hooked. Like, I really enjoy it. I'm really having fun with it. I'm looking forward to getting to 90 though, and actually playing this game as an MMO finally, which has really never happened up to this point since we started playing in May or June, whatever it was, because we're so focused on main story quests the whole time that we never really I dabbled in post game content barely after I hit 80, and where I got my gathering equipment and stuff for level 80. But other than that, I really didn't do it. So I'm actually looking forward to being caught up, not having any main story quests kind of hanging over my head. And really, we're going to have patches from here on out every few months, that add maybe 10 or so quests, main story quests. So at this point, once I'm done, I'm going to be done, and I can focus on leveling other classes, doing dungeons, the raid and all that stuff, and some of the side activities. So I can actually start really playing this game in a deeper way, which I'm excited for. Montrell doesn't want to play it though. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to play with us. He hates us.
I don't hate you guys. I just don't feel like spending $90 to catch up.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Man, you're all kind of doing this. You're all doing this.
Justin, nope. No. You're not going to convince me, bro.
You're all doing this to me. Brad's doing this too. He's trying to convince himself. He's already saying like, "Oh, you guys are too far ahead," and I'm like, "Dude, this isn't World of Warcraft, okay? You don't get left behind because you don't play the game for a week. Like, nobody cares. Like, the game is everything scales. I could literally be fucking level 90 and I can go do a level 15 dungeon with you. There is no leaving people behind. Like, that doesn't happen in this game, So I get kind of annoyed when he says it. You, on the other hand, you're a little different. You put time into this game already, so I get it. you already bought a boost, which is now useless because you need to buy another boost if you want to catch up. It's is a little bit more of an investment there for you. That's probably kind of annoying. So I get it, I do, but at the same time, we miss you, and we would love to have our Dark Knight tank back. So. But it's fine. Maybe I'll convince you to play Dota 2.
That's not happening. I would rather play Final Fantasy 14 than Dota.
Look, man. Look, we have 4 people. Like, me and Brad are in it. Okay, we're playing. Andy wants to play. Jed already played with us the other day. You're it. If you join us, we got a pre-made, bro. We're gonna get wrecked together, but we got a pre-made. Like,
I don't think Dota is the MOBA for me.
Why not?
It's too slow for me. It's just way too slow for me.
It's not slow.
It's way too slow.
It's not slow.
Way too slow.
That's the wrong word. It's just paced differently.
That's just how I don't like this. Pace is slow. Yeah, I don't like the pace of it.
I just don't understand.
My kind of MOBA.
I don't understand how you can prefer League, where like the game is decided in the first 5 minutes. I don't know. I can't play that game right now. Like, I hate it. I hate how fast the game is decided, where the mentality is like, okay, by 10 minutes, if we aren't winning, I want to surrender. Like, like that feels the way the game is at this point in League. Dota, like, if you're losing, you can come back. It happens. You can do it. Actually, it's not that hard generally. So I don't know, whatever. I'll keep chipping away at you. One thing I will say about Final Fantasy though, it is kind of weird. The game is definitely less optimized with this expansion. I have been having a lot of frame drops playing this on PS5 that did not happen before this expansion came out. So that is kind of a weird element. I'm hoping they fix it, but I know they got a lot of other concerns right now. So, but it is fairly regular, and it hasn't affected me in dungeons yet, really. So it's not a big problem. But when I'm in like a big town or something where there's a lot of players running around, like I get pretty bad frame drops sometimes. So, but all right, that's all I've got for games I'm playing. Montrell's not playing anything because he's not a gamer. So let's move on to the news. And so I'm gonna warn you guys right now. We have a big news story that we're gonna talk about, and that's gonna be basically the entire episode. So it's probably going to carry us for quite a while here. Everything else, I kind of just kicked to next week because this is one of the biggest gaming stories we've ever had on this show. So we want to do it justice for sure. So, Montrell, the deal to end all deals happened this week. It's not done, but Microsoft announced on Tuesday that they have agreed. Everybody's agreed. Them and Activision have agreed. They've agreed to purchase Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. Let me repeat that. $68.7 billion. Like, this is the biggest gaming deal ever by a wide margin, which is funny because the previous highest gaming deal ever happened last week when Take-Two bought Zynga for like $12 billion. So, shit's getting crazy right now in the industry. Acquisitions, consolidation is happening all over the place. But we're focused on this deal specifically. So one thing I want to do, one caveat or one piece I want to put in here before we get talking in depth is Phil Spencer's been talking today and yesterday since this was kind of announced. And he did an interview yesterday, or actually he tweeted. I don't even think he did an interview. He tweeted out, had good calls this week with the leaders at Sony. I confirmed our intent to honor all existing agreements upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Sony is an important part of our industry and we value our relationship. End quote. So that's the main caveat I want to put in there. We can discuss the importance or non-importance of that quote as we talk. But Montrell, I want to start just at the general level, like top level. How do you feel about this right now?
So what's crazy is my coworker, we were driving up to where I was supposed to go, and or I was driving. I was already there, but I was driving back because the job site is like 30 minutes outside the town I was staying in. And so, anyway, I was still driving, and he was like, "Yo, Microsoft just bought Activision," and I pulled over, and I'm like, "You're fucking shitting me right now." He's like, "No." He's like, they just bought Activision. First, he said Blizzard, so I thought maybe Activision sold Blizzard and was like, "We're still gonna be Activision, and we just sold off Blizzard, so fuck it." And he's like, "No, they bought everybody. They bought the entire Activision Blizzard conglomerate." And I'm like, "No fucking way." I stopped. I pulled over to like a gas station, and I was like reading everything, and I'm like, "This is fucking huge." Now that's when I sent you the text
Is that
message or
you?
whatever.
Is that when you texted me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I heard it from you. I didn't. You were the reason. You were the first.
Oh, you didn't even. You didn't
I didn't
even
know
see it
about
on
it
the
yet
news?
either. No, I was in the
Okay.
middle of work. Like I was my first the beginning of my day, like my first 2 hours of my day are meetings, so I never have time to look at my phone really. So
Gotcha.
yeah. But
Yeah, so my coworker sent me that, and I was honestly floored. He was like, "Oh, it didn't go through yet, obviously because the Department of Justice has to approve it, so it won't become, so they won't see if it's a monopoly." Um, which I guess the argument can go either way. I don't think it's a monopoly, because even though it's Activision Blizzard, it's still a small section of the or maybe like 1/6 of the whole industry, right? So you
yeah.
got the Call of Duty franchise, and you
hmm
got Overwatch, and you got Diablo, you got
hmm
StarCraft and stuff like that. But like maybe only two of those franchises are the ones I mentioned, and World of Warcraft. Three of those franchises I mentioned are really big, but they're on the decline. So I really don't consider this a monopoly. So I think the deal should go through.
hmm
But the only thing that both me and my coworker can think of was Bobby Kotick. That's the first thing both me and him jumped to,
Yep.
because the board had to say, instead of firing Bobby Kotick, they just sold. Like they couldn't admit it.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Um,
Yeah. I guess let's start here, right? Let's start with the antitrust stuff, I guess, first, and then we'll get to Bobby. The antitrust side, there's a prominent lawyer that covers the game industry. He It's called Richard Hogue. He has a YouTube channel called Virtual Legality. I do recommend it if you want to be educated a little bit more on the specifics of things like this. He said that he believes there is this was his words, non-zero chance that the deal gets blocked. Basically
okay.
he's saying there's a possibility that the deal will not go through, that it will be blocked on the grounds of antitrust / monopoly, of it being somewhat of a monopoly.
Wait, he said it will get blocked or it won't get
No,
blocked.
he thinks there's a chance it will get blocked, but more than likely, more than the majority, his majority opinion on it is that it will go through.
Okay.
Which that has been the kind of consensus that I've seen. And so he was saying on the grounds, though, that it's not a monopoly in the sense that they own like a lion's share of the industry, which they don't. They won't, even with this, acquisition. But he said in the sense of Game Pass, this is where the problem is that they actually do kind of
Mm,
have a monopoly in that space. And that is where the question is really going to come in. That's going to be the key for the people examining this is, do they believe there is proper competition in that realm to justify allowing this to go through, because it
okay.
really depends on how Microsoft plans on using this acquisition. If they're going to use it to gobble up all these studios and games and make them all exclusive and put them all on Game Pass to drive Game Pass, then all of a sudden you've got a very, 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 very powerful service that is going to be almost impossible for anybody to overcome at this point, because there's no one else in the realm to overcome it, even Sony, with their plans. So that's on the antitrust front. That's probably the big question. We'll see. I don't think it's going to get blocked. I think it's going to go through ultimately, but that is the one piece that I think is a threat to them not getting the deal. So Bobby, though, yes, that was my first thought as well when you said this to me. It is interesting. I've seen a little bit of chatter about this, not a ton in the grand scope of the whole conversation, but yeah, dude, like Bobby's getting off clean, dude. Like
Yep.
he out. He I mean, this is like the best thing that could have happened to Bobby, you know? Like honestly, when you really think about it, like from his perspective, you know, like I'm sure he loves Activision and he wants to be CEO forever, but or wanted to. But um I think when you think about what's happened with that company and him in the last few months, this is probably his like optimal outcome is that he gets to leave. He doesn't leave in shame because that's not what's going to happen. You know, they're gonna be like, oh, we're so sorry to see Bobby go. We appreciate everything he's done for us over the last 30 years. You know, all that bullshit,
Yep.
right? They're gonna, you know, it's gonna be this glowing, flowery language or whatever. And then he gets a humongous payday because he fucking owns like a large amount of Activision. Like he owns a huge amount of Activision stock, you know? So yeah, he gets the ultimate golden parachute in this situation, and that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Because I think we talked about it before, how majority of the board is his friends.
Yeah.
Like, didn't we say that?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
I knew we
Yes.
had it documented somewhere. I can't remember. So we knew that they weren't gonna fire him unless, you know, some kind of black male shady deal goes down and like, okay, well, you know, now we got to get rid of Bobby, even though he's our friend. So I really feel like they went to Microsoft and was like, or one of the board members went to Microsoft. They probably like, you know, had a nice little dinner or whatever, and was like, yeah, so we need to get out of this shit. Can you buy us?
Yeah.
Microsoft was probably like, oh shit, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, you're one of the biggest fucking publishers in gaming right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
I
fucking
mean, they
kidding me?
are. Besides Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony themselves, yeah, they are. Straight up.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think how much was it, 70 billion? I think that's a steal. Like, that may not sound like a steal, but I think that's a steal. As much money as they bring in a year,
Yeah.
just based off Call of Duty alone, that just screams like they're trying to get out this Bobby Kotick situation, in my opinion.
Right.
$70 when they normally bring in like what, 2 or 3 billion just from Call of Duty alone, and then, you know, not to mention like fucking World of Warcraft and all the other shit like that. Yeah, man, they got off scot free. Like, this is crazy.
Well,
This is insane.
so you really think the Bobby controversy led to this deal? You don't think this was in because think about when that happened, right? That was August, right? Is when the
Yeah.
stuff first started coming out about Blizzard and then Bobby as well. That kind of went into September a little bit, I think. That's not that long ago. These deals are complicated to negotiate, you know? So I think it's possible that was the catalyst that opened the door for Microsoft to, or maybe Activision was like, yeah, we need somebody to buy us, or Microsoft came in and was like, hey, we see you're not doing so hot. Do you want us to acquire you and, you know, fix some of these issues and get you out of here? You know, I think that's definitely possible, but it's also possible this was already in the works before that, and it kind of just happened to work out in Microsoft's favor that all this shit happened because it makes the deal look better for them because they get a lot of positive press about how they're gonna, oh, we're gonna save Activision Blizzard's culture, and, you know, we're gonna turn it all around. We're not gonna tolerate hate or fucking, you know, treating minorities like shit, you know, like
No, I definitely agree with you.
mm-hmm.
I agree with that 100%. I was thinking about it because at first I was going to disagree, but I agree with you. They probably have been talking about it, and the deal's probably been in a stalemate. Maybe Activision was like, you know, we want 100 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
bro, you're not gonna buy us 100 billion. And then Bobby Kotick came out, and they're like, fuck. And then Microsoft was like, well, that 100 million or billion is definitely on the table now. How about 70 billion? And we'll take it at that. You know, I don't know, man. It's just weird how that whole, I think that Bobby Kotick thing really fucked him up. Like,
Yeah.
That's just insane. How bad
Yeah,
that's it. That's
to me, that feels like the catalyst, right? I think if those stories hadn't come out about Blizzard and then Bobby, as well over the last few months, I don't think this would have happened. Like,
yeah, because if you think about it from a business standpoint, right? And I'm not like a fucking, I don't have an MBA and all the shit like that. I'm just thinking about it from a layman's terms. Like, why the fuck would I want to sell myself to Microsoft when I can still get the benefit of both worlds when I'm selling to Microsoft and Sony? Like that exclusive deal, those exclusive deals they were doing, they were just jumping to whoever was popular. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, during the 360 era, they gave exclusivity to fucking Microsoft, as
yeah,
far as like timed exclusive DLC deals
yes,
and maps
yeah,
and shit like that.
yeah,
And now it was, and then PS4 and even the PS5, it was the same deal. Um, it was like with fucking with Destiny when Destiny was under Activision, they had exclusive PlayStation content and everything of that nature. So it just they were getting all this money, and it just made so much sense. And to me, I wouldn't even want to sell myself to Microsoft, no matter how much they were making, because I still had a steady cash flow. I could still play the best of both worlds, and I can play PC, and I can go over in China and get like the Chinese games that I'm making, the mobile market, all this. I have all this money coming in. What do I need you for? I don't need you. You need me. So I. But now that press was so bad, and I really think not only the Bobby Kotick situation, but I think this has been brewing for years, or
hmm
not years, but for at least a year and a half. Because I want to say it started with the Microsoft. I'm sorry, with the Blizzard situation, and I think it started with World of Warcraft 3 Reforged.
mm.
And ever since that game dropped, it's just been nothing but constant negative press
Well,
for
even
Blizzard.
before that, Blitzchung, you remember that? The start of
Oh
Blitzchung, or
yeah,
was that
yep,
after? Yeah, that was before Reforged,
that
I
was
think.
before Reforged. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, there was Blitzchung, dude. They've been Yeah, when you look at it from that perspective, right? Because a lot of the time with these mergers and acquisitions of big companies, CEOs, the leadership oftentimes is written into the contract such that they are given a kind of an like they have to like have a non-compete in there for the leadership that they will not leave. They cannot go to another company for like a set number of years, like 5 or 10 years. That's usually how this goes because they're so integral to the company's success a lot of the time. This is a funny. That's why I think the stuff with Bobby is a catalyst because I don't think Bobby wanted to leave. Right? He owns a huge amount of the company. I think he owns a majority of the company. Like I think he owns more than 50% still. And given that, why would he want to leave his own company? Right? Like I mean, it's not his company, but he owns a big amount of it. But he didn't found it or anything like that. But like why would he want to leave? The company is still successful despite their issues, right? And he has control. He's got his friends on the board or whatever. There's not a reason for him to leave. And then until these stories come out, and then all of a sudden there's all this pressure on Bobby. All this bullshit happening about their culture and sexual harassment with people that are high up in the company too, like to this day. So at that point, it becomes a situation where, okay, I can sell to Microsoft. They don't want me to stay after the acquisition. And I can make fuck ton of money doing this. All right, I guess I'm out. It like probably turns over really fast for him, changes from
Yeah.
I don't want to leave to, okay, I guess I'm leaving, and let's make this clear too. They haven't confirmed that Bobby's leaving after the acquisition, but it's pretty much all but confirmed. The way they worded the
I
statement makes it clear that he's probably not going to be around after this
he
position's
would
up.
have to be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet to stay. Like
Well,
this
so
is
would
your outing.
Microsoft would have to be stupid to want to keep him.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially after Phil Spencer said that shit. What 2 weeks ago? Yeah, bro. Like you gotta get rid of him
oh
now.
man, yeah, yeah,
And if you take Bobby Kotick like as like a VP or something like that, you're gonna get fucking people are gonna shit on you about that.
yeah, right.
Um, I just think it's insane. Like, there's so many layers to this. I don't know where else you want to take it, but like,
Well,
not even like, do you
yeah.
want to talk about the IPs or something like that, or
Well, okay. Yeah, I guess. Okay. Yeah,
Or do you want to
I
talk
have a
about
bunch
the?
of shit written down here. I have a bunch of
Yeah,
shit
I
written down.
see it.
And
Yeah,
I want to get to all of this, but we don't have to do this in the order I have it written. So yeah, let's jump to the IP next. Actually, I think that's a good place to go, because we're talking mostly about Activision right now. So let's continue
yeah,
that, and then we can kind of veer into Blizzard. I think at the same time, right? So in
yep.
terms of IP, right, we got the obvious ones. Call of Duty, that's a big boy, right? The biggest boy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can't get a bigger boy IP than Call of Duty at this point, which uh, is funny because Call of Duty has been doing worse recently, right? It is not the juggernaut it was necessarily like 3 years ago. It's still the biggest probably franchise in gaming, but it has definitely had some negative buzz around it recently. And so you got that. Then you got weird shit, right? You've got fucking Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, which were Sony games, Sony franchises back in the day. They're now owned by Xbox. Like, isn't that fucking weird, dude? You've got Guitar Hero, Guitar
God,
Hero games, Hexen, which is something they own. I don't know the full list of fucking IPs, but it is probably very extensive. You've
the
got
Tony Hawk
Tony Hawk.
franchise.
That was another one. Yep, I was thinking of. And then if you go to Blizzard, I mean, obviously you've got everything Blizzard makes: Warcraft, StarCraft, Diablo, Overwatch, Hearthstone, all this shit, right?
Yeah,
Heroes of the Storm, all these games, So suddenly Microsoft is just stocked full of really good IP, suddenly that they can play with and do kind of what they want with. So I guess let's start with COD. We probably need to talk about COD a little bit more in depth. So
yeah, yeah,
I read that quote earlier. He said that Call of Duty, they want it to remain on PlayStation. The way he said
yeah.
that was pretty definitive. This isn't like the way he was talking about Bethesda, where he was like kind of vague and said what talked out of two sides of his mouth. He said pretty clearly, our desire is to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Like he said those words. So I think that makes it fairly clear that they're going to keep it multi-platform. But what do you think?
It would be very stupid for them to make this an exclusive title. Um,
Yeah.
you can make money on both consoles instead of trying to get everyone to buy your console. Because no one's gonna like as much as I love the Xbox and everything of that nature. I love both consoles. Um, I, you have a lot of diehard Sony fans who would gladly just give up fucking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's too submitted. A lot of people are too submitted into the PlayStation ecosystem to just be like, all right, well, I'm gonna stop playing Call of Duty now because it's on Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really dumb. I don't think people are gonna buy an Xbox for Call of Duty. And then again, I may be wrong because people buy Call of Duty every fucking year. So that can definitely be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I just don't. Yeah, it just makes sense to keep it on both consoles, and I really do think they'll do that. I think it's going to be another Minecraft situation where Minecraft is on all consoles,
Yep.
and that's bringing in tons of money a year for them, and it would just be a non. It would just not be a good business move. It would be, you know what? I'm going to say it. It would be a Sony move if they did that shit. This would be
Yeah.
something Sony would do if they were to acquire Activision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Xbox is like more so on a business side of things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually going to disagree with you here.
Mm.
I don't think it's totally stupid because I think it is ultimately, if you really sit down and do a pros cons list, it probably is not the right choice, right? It's probably not the right decision. But from one angle, there is one angle where I think it could really, really like kill Sony, right? You take it away from Sony, not only because, dude, think about this. We read MPD every month, right? What's the game at the top of the list every fucking month? Call of Duty, right?
Call of Duty. Yeah.
What was the third game for
Mario
the
Kart.
year? What was the Mario Kart? What was the third game though? Third overall game for the year last year was the second Call of Duty. It was the Call of Duty from fucking 2020. That was number 3 for the year. So there was 2 fucking Call of Duty games in the top 3 for the year last year. And on PlayStation, that is the same. Like it sells a fuck ton on PlayStation. So you take that game away from PlayStation, that is a huge amount of fucking money you were taking away from Sony, directly taking away from Sony. And yes, it hurts Microsoft, but what does Microsoft fucking care? They have like a 2 trillion market cap. Like, what's a few $100 million to them? Like, it's fucking chump change. It's literally pennies in their pin cushions, you know? Like, so in that sense, if they really want to take it to Sony, that's an option. The second reason that it would potentially make sense is to bolster Game Pass with it, in the sense that you can't get it on PlayStation, right? But you can have it on Game Pass anyways while it's on PlayStation, so it's not that big of a boon there. But the idea of Call of Duty on Game Pass is fucking insane, dude. Like, that is hyper tantalizing, I think, for Microsoft, right? That's got to be one of the bigger drivers of why they did this, because the games they can now put on Game Pass, and like their eagerness to get these games on Game Pass was so obvious in their quotes that they were talking about. Like they were like, we are going to try to get as many of these games on Game Pass as we absolutely possibly can. Like, they're all going on Game Pass, man. Like, they're going to try to get all this shit on Game Pass. Think about how fucking robust suddenly this becomes. Like, Game Pass is already robust, but think about their catalog that they can offer. They don't even need third parties anymore, dude. They have so many games and IPs that they have within their internal first party that they can put on this service, that this is becoming like a value proposition all its own without anyone else even being involved. Like, forget about fucking paying companies to put their games on there. They don't even need to do that if they don't want to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see the potential in killing the market like that. I just think they'll get that. I can come back on them really fast.
Yeah.
Not really fast, but it would be cool for a couple of years, right? But then the whole industry would probably just go to shit. Like, everyone would be like, well, I'm done playing video games. Because I don't know, just doing that, like, it is good for a business move to, like, cut the feet off from Sony. Like, you guys don't have Call of Duty anymore, so fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah, the risk though is they erode Call of Duty as an IP if they do that, because suddenly it's not as accessible, and then its exposure is not as high. So what are people going to do, right? If Call of Duty is not available, do you think people on PlayStation are going to go buy Xboxes to play Call of Duty? I actually don't think so. Call of Duty is like generic enough as a game that there's plenty of other shooters you could probably go to and get a similarly fun
I was
experience.
just gonna say that they can easily get who was it that made a shooter? Insomniac that made Resistance, right? Was that them?
Yeah.
They can easily get Insomniac to make them a shooter, because Insomniac are competent in shooters. They can easily get Guerrilla Games to make them a good shooter. They have people who know how to make shooters on their teams, in their studios. So it's not hard. And then they can probably acquire some low or indie developers and make them, double A or triple A developers, and then make a shooter. Like, it's not fucking hard. And all Microsoft would have is Halo, and as much as I love it, it's definitely not as powerful as it used to be. It's nowhere near as powerful as it used to be in the early 2000s. So, yeah, Call of Duty can die. Like, this, for all we know, they make the next Call of Duty and that shit just fucking flops. Like, everyone was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm done with Call of Duty. So I agree with you. Like, that's just a huge risk to do that. And on top of that, people hate Microsoft still. So that 2013 is really the catalyst that, like, broke the camel's back, because people hate Microsoft. So if you do this and you kill one of their favorite games in the same sense, oh yeah, that's it. It's done.
Well, also COD's really expensive to make, right? They're like, Activision has literally 3 studios in rotation that make COD games, right? And then they also have several sub studios that support the development of those games. It's not like COD is cheap to make. It's not cheap to make at all. Like, they make a shit ton of money off it, but they also put a lot of money into it, That is why it's a successful franchise. They invest into making sure it is quality, like that it is a high quality game, right? So it doesn't make sense to take it away. I think this one is really obvious to me. Like, I think it's pretty, and it's clear that they feel the same way. The fact that they're coming out and saying this so quickly, I think it's pretty clear they're probably not going to take it away. I think this one would be ridiculous to take away. It's got too much pull in the industry. It's got way too much exposure. It is the most popular game out there, you know. So I wouldn't see that. The rest, though, everything else that we mentioned, yeah, I think everything else is on the table, really. Like even the Blizzard stuff, absolutely. They don't have a heritage on Sony, really. You know, beyond recently, I don't think they're going to lose a ton there making those exclusive, and they're going to use those to bolster their PC Game Pass offering now all of a sudden, and that becomes a lot more tantalizing, right? To me, I would think, right? Because that PC Game Pass has been struggling a bit. So, a couple other IP we didn't mention either was Candy Crush. They acquired King in this deal, of course, too, because they're part of Activision. So they've gotten Candy Crush Saga, which is one of the biggest mobile IPs out there, as well. And then we forgot about this one too, Skylanders, which interestingly, this was a big franchise of last generation. I could actually see them bringing this back potentially. That'd be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, I can see them bringing Skylanders back. Skylanders did die, but that's one of those IPs, right? That was super big, and it was continuously big, like Rock Band. And this is where I feel like Call of Duty is in that same boat. Like, you remember how Rock Band was coming out every year with something new and exciting, or not new and exciting, but they were coming out with something new every year. And Skylanders was constantly updating itself. I feel like Call of Duty had just been lucky. But with this acquisition, if they were to do what you said earlier, like cut the legs off from Sony, they can end up as one of those IPs where it's like, oh, it used to be great, now it isn't. But as far as like Blizzard and everything of that nature, I can 100% see a first-person exclusive StarCraft Marines game coming out on Xbox. I can see that. Xbox and PC.
Yeah.
I can see something like that happening. Excuse me.
Ooh, bless you.
Sorry about that. Overwatch though, I think Overwatch will remain multi-plat. I can't see them. I don't think Overwatch branding is strong enough to where they're like, we're gonna make this an Xbox exclusive because the game is already sort of kind of. I might get flack for this, dead, but
yeah.
Well, it's not dead. It's not as popular as it used to be. There are still plenty of people playing Overwatch, and I think they will be pissed if Overwatch 2 or even 3 was like an Xbox exclusive. And I think Microsoft's smart enough not to make that exclusive. But I do think Microsoft is smart enough to make spin-off games of these IPs exclusive.
Yeah. Well, what about
your
Diablo?
Warcrafts? I think. Ooh, that's a good question.
You think Diablo 4? Like, you think that's going to be exclusive?
That's no. Well, no.
I mean, okay.
Well,
I'm gonna make
that is a powerful IP.
Yeah,
that is an IP that would drive consoles.
I will say
that is
Diablo's huge. Okay, Diablo is probably Blizzard's biggest IP, which I know World of Warcraft, but in terms of its current penetration, I think Diablo might be their biggest IP right now. And they got a game that is going to be huge. But to me, though, this feels like a Microsoft game, like a game that it's not Microsoft's game, but it feels like a game that slots into Xbox really naturally. It doesn't slot into PlayStation that naturally to me. You know, it's not something that I think Sony's fan base, like historically has a big like pull with necessarily. So I could see this one being exclusive. I don't think they're going to, just because of how big it could be if they release it on everything. But I would be interested to see it. If
I can see that happening if it's really big, and then they come out with a Diablo 5 or whatever, right? Or maybe a Diablo spin-off game, and that game is exclusively because you remember they wanted to do a third-person Diablo instead.
Yes, like
what if they
inspired, yeah.
Yeah, what if they revisit that idea, but they make it Xbox exclusive?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the other tantalizing part of this is suddenly these IPs, we talked about this with Bethesda, they don't...
Oh, they're open up to other studios now.
Blizzard isn't exclusively the ones going to be working on these IPs anymore necessarily, you know? Like suddenly Diablo could be made by some other studio within Microsoft's stable, so you're talking about spin-off games. That is the perfect place to experiment with something like that, where you have like, Obsidian maybe make some kind of like, RPG, first person, maybe RPG Diablo game or something like that, there's options there now that are a lot more tantalizing than you would probably think at first glance. The RTS element too is this. Okay, all right, we're getting into the Blizzard big here. I just got myself really excited by saying the word RTS.
Yeah. All right. So y'all,
RTSs might not be dead, Montrell.
Not only that, but this is the reason why this story is so big for us is because we've been talking about the state of Blizzard for the last 3 years now, Justin.
The whole podcast.
Our first episode.
Yep.
Our first episode was the state of Blizzard because me and Justin are such huge fans of Blizzard. So to see this come into fruition is like something I think we actually toyed with the idea of somebody buying Blizzard besides Activision. Yeah. I want to go back and listen to our old ones, but yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. Like, I'm just glad now that like, oh man, we can get like Obsidian, we can get fucking Ninja Theory to make an action game. Oh, they can make the Ghost game that we always fucking wanted. Like they can, oh my, yeah. Like the fucking possibilities are endless, bro. Like,
dude. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like Microsoft, this is okay. So overall, I'm really negative on this acquisition, and I think a lot of people are. But this is my one silver lining. This is literally my one silver lining is that Blizzard might not be dead. Like in the way we've been talking about them being dead, this might be the thing that saves them as a company, because Microsoft's going to come in now and not expect the same things that Activision did. They're going to tell them like, wait, you want to make Warcraft 4 like an RTS or StarCraft 3 or some other new RTS? Yeah, go ahead. We don't care. Like, yeah, that's great. Like, we love that. We love RTS games here. We've made Halo Wars 1 and 2. Like, we love RTS. We got fucking Age of Empires, 4 that just came out. Like, yeah, we love RTS games. Let's go. Fucking, yeah, Warcraft 4, absolutely greenlit. Let's go. Like, so I think that's my silver lining is that I actually have hope now for Blizzard in a way I didn't before. Activision was killing this company because they didn't understand what made them great and why they were valuable in the first place. They never got it. They never understood it. And then they came in and they started changing things. And Blizzard changed themselves too. That's also true. And that's also part of the problem. But I think they changed because of their relationship with Activision, right? They felt like they needed to push numbers and make more money than whatever than they used to feel. And I don't think Microsoft's going to put that pressure on them anymore, which means that they can focus on creativity and making great games, and making them the way that they used to make them, where they're ready when they're ready, like they don't rush shit out. They don't over monetize shit. They don't ruin their game with monetization. I think that's realistic now, suddenly. And Warcraft 4, maybe it happens, I think it's on the table, because it's been so long since Blizzard made an RTS, dude. That's crazy. Like StarCraft 2 came out, the first part of the trilogy came out, I think in 2008. Is that right? Or 2009? I don't remember. But
I can't remember.
Yeah, and the final part of the trilogy came out in like 2015 or 2014 or something like that. So it's been a long time since they actually really made an RTS game. And StarCraft 2 wasn't even that great. Like, it wasn't even that successful for them. So I personally would like to see it. I'd like to see more creativity out of them too. Play around with genres, like fuck around with these IPs, do some interesting shit with it. I think that's my only, like, that's really the thing I'm taking out of this, that I can really see a future for Blizzard now, that I can come back in maybe and actually like the company again and like their games. I think that's possible. But how do you feel about that?
So I know everybody's been negative about the whole thing. I say it's negative from a perspective of like, I've actually been like 60-40 positive. Because I just really want these companies to do something other than what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now the reason I'm 40% positive is because Microsoft has acquired all these studios, and we have yet to see anything be produced from said studios. I mean, I know Ninja Theory tried to make a side game that really didn't go out too well. They got Sunya 2,
Hellblade.
Hellblade 2 coming out. Oh, that's the main character's name. I'm sorry. Uh, but they got Hellblade 2 coming out. And that's going to be exclusive to Xbox. Um, but I mean, and I think Obsidian has a game, like 2 or 3 games actually coming out. Like
Yes.
I know they got an RPG game coming out, and they
Avowed.
have
Yeah.
another game. Yeah.
Um,
So I mean, I know all these games. I know it takes time, years to make games. We're probably not going to see anything from them for a couple of years. But I just don't want Microsoft to get too complacent and say like, "Hey, like since we got all these studios, we have to do shit." I really want them to make something out of these IPs, and everything of that nature. So,
mhm.
oh, and who knows? Maybe we'll get like a fucking we'll get like a Final Fantasy 14 situation with Warcraft, and they'll be like exclusive on Xbox or something like that. You
Yeah.
know, that would
Yeah.
be pretty cool. They make a console version for the game. It's
Mhm.
cross platform stuff.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm just
Well,
throwing ideas out there.
yeah. So the reason I said I'm negative on this is it's mostly because of the consolidation aspect. From an Activision standpoint, I actually think this is a positive acquisition, right? I think we're going to get better games out of Activision than we've ever gotten. Probably we're going to get more experimentation. We're probably going to get more variety, hopefully, and it's going to have a positive effect on their company culture as well, which I think is a big takeaway from this as well. That a lot of people are pointing at. That it's a good point. I think Bobby clearly and the leadership at Activision clearly don't care about their employees and never have, and they're assholes, like straight up. Bobby's just a piece of shit. The guy, like the shit he says, he thinks he's like I don't understand. He's like oblivious to how much of a evil like corporate billionaire he sounds like. Like he doesn't realize how much of like a villain he sounds like when he talks. Like
Bro, like this guy has like the most punchable face. Like I
yes,
don't know, and I don't like to say stuff like that, but out of all the shit that he done to people, like, and he's like, when he smiles, I'm like, oh my god, I just punch him. But
yeah.
yeah, continue.
Yeah, so from that aspect, I think it's great. I think that's a good thing. I think we are going to get a positive impact in terms of the output from Activision Blizzard as well. The negative side of this, though, is the pure consolidation aspect that suddenly a humongous player in the industry is owned by Microsoft. You know, like Activision was the biggest publisher that was third party. They were the biggest one, straight up. Somebody put out there the values of most of the other major publishers that are remaining after this deal, and EA was the next closest at like 38 billion or something, and then it was like Take Two at 18 billion, and then there was like a humongous drop off after that, where it was like basically all around like 10 billion or less for the most part. And I'm including that includes like Square Enix, Ubisoft, like they're not that big compared to Activision. Activision was fucking huge, in terms of their market cap at least. So the thing about it is, this is what scares me is suddenly, with Activision off the board, Microsoft can easily just go acquire anybody now. Anything's possible at this point now. If they're willing to pay 68 billion for Activision, they'll pay whatever the fuck for anybody else. There's nobody else that's more valuable. So, besides like Sony themselves or Nintendo, probably themselves, and they're not acquiring either of them. Well, maybe Nintendo. They did try in the 90s to acquire Nintendo, and failed. But Sony, no way. But it's like, so at this point, anybody's on the table. They could buy EA, which EA feels like an obvious one for Microsoft. Like their gamers are all about sports games, Same with Take Two, right? Like Take Two's another one. Like bang, yeah, done, dude. Like done deal. So I don't know. Like I don't feel like to you, what is the limit to you of what they will do? Is it really whatever the line the government has for them in terms of them being a monopoly? Like, because if that's the
Unfortunately,
case, I don't know what
that's
that
the
line
only
is.
line. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the only line, and that's where it does get scary at. Like, that's the only line that can stop them from acquiring all these other companies. Unfortunately, like Sony's gonna have to fight back. They do got to buy somebody. Um,
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. You feel like they need to respond.
I feel like they need to come out with Project Spartacus now.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be coming out soon, next few months. But well, okay. I guess let's start there. Project Spartacus, right? It's rumored that first party games were not going to be day-and-date on the service. Do you think that suddenly changes? Do you think they're already they've probably maybe already decided that okay, first party games day-and-date on Spartacus? Because that's their biggest ace in the hole to me to make Spartacus tantalizing to people compared to Game Pass. Is that's like the one thing Sony still has over Microsoft is quality of games, right? They
Yep.
still have that crown, and I don't think that's going to change in the near term, right? Necessarily. So, given that, they need to make Spartacus as tantalizing as possible. I think if they really legitimately want to compete with Game Pass, um, and the only way to do that is to give up the first party, put them in the service, you know? Maybe not all of them, but more than a few, you know? And there needs to be some big ones in there too, like God of War, maybe, you know, like Horizon, maybe not like Naughty Dog's next game. But you know, you need a couple of the big boys at least to make it worthwhile to me. Um,
Yeah.
or you could just go all the way and just do everybody. You know, at that point, bang. I mean, you've already at that point, you're like, okay, our service has got better games than Game Pass. They can legitimately go out there and say that. Like Spartacus, yeah, sure, Game Pass has a ton of games, but we have the better games, you know? Like we have the best games on our service, you know. So do you think that's something they would do?
Yeah. I mean, no. Sony is stubborn. I don't think they would do it. I
Yeah.
think they would still like hold it for a month or two, or maybe 3 months, and then put it on Spartacus. I think it just has to be worthwhile. So they may hold it even for 6 months and then put it on Spartacus. Um, but you are right about one thing. I think they have the quality of games. My thing is like, and this is a big what if, but what if Microsoft starts in the next 2 years, their studios are like, okay, we have our games done now, and those games come out and they're on par with shit. They're on par with Sony. Then like what do you have? The only thing that I think they don't have to do a major acquisition. Sony doesn't have to, but buy Square Enix. Like that seems like a shoe in.
Man, I
I
don't want to
know
see
what you're
that.
gonna.
I don't want to
I
see
don't
that.
either. I don't either. But
That does feel like the obvious one, though. I think if Sony's going to respond with an acquisition, Square's it. Like, that's it. Lock that down because I think this is the thing. This acquisition, if Sony didn't know about it before Tuesday and they heard the news the same time the rest of us did, this had to have been ringing off alarm bells for them. Like, oh, fuck. Like, who's next? Like, shit, dude. Like, because realistically, Microsoft's probably not going to buy anybody else until this deal goes through, right? Because if they do that, then they're giving the antitrust people more reason to be like, you know, like you don't want to risk that. So I think until the deal is finished and finalized and done, and the acquisition is actually made, I don't think they're going to buy anything else for now. But that doesn't mean they can't negotiate behind the scenes, though. You know,
yeah,
so Sony's got to be quick here if they're going to acquire something. Square feels like a target. You know, like these are the big ones for me, right? Square, Sega, Capcom, and Konami.
and
Actually, those four.
and and Sega already has a working relationship
Yes,
with
Microsoft.
Microsoft.
And there's rumors
I
about
feel
them acquiring Sega too, right?
yeah. I mean, but those rumors have been going on for fucking years.
Yeah. I know, but
uh,
it could happen at any moment though, right?
yeah, that's
Like
true. That's
so
true.
that's my point. Those four that I just named, um i- any of those four get purchased, that is a huge blow to Sony. I'd say particularly Square Enix, Sega specifically with Atlas, and then Capcom in general. I think those would be big blows because there is a ton of exclusive games that they get out of those publishers in a third party capacity. And I think that that's where Microsoft, if they really want to strike Sony where it hurts, go buy Square, dude. Because if you go buy Square and you make all Square's games exclusive to Xbox, you have just sundered Sony at the fucking knees. Like you have taken their knees out straight up.
I
Like,
the only reason I don't think Square would do that, right, is because Microsoft is not popular in the West or in the East rather.
Mm-hmm.
So you're losing out on that huge Eastern audience
Mm-hmm.
by getting acquired by Microsoft.
Yeah. I
Only
mean, you're
only way,
sacrificing those games if you're Microsoft if you're doing that because they're not going to sell as much on your platform as they do on Sony's. Like you're straight up, they're not. But you're
yeah,
doing it to take
eh,
it away from Sony. You know.
yeah, but you're essentially killing like a huge like culture industry
Mm-hmm.
RPG
Yeah.
like IPs. Like you're killing Final
No, that
Fantasy if you
deal,
do that.
that deal would kill any goodwill that Microsoft has. I think people would legitimately be extremely upset if they acquired Square. Like to a degree that I think everybody would turn on them. Straight up. That would be one of the worst things for the industry possible because you're 100% correct. If they do that and they made those games exclusive, they're all but killing Square Enix, to me. Like because the games just aren't going to sell on Xbox. They have a market on PC, but it paled. All this we're mentioning pales in comparison to what they sell on PlayStation. Like PlayStation is the primary platform. That's why they do exclusive deals with Sony because not only do they get a lump sum of money, but they're still making hand over fist money on game sales because that's where they sell the lion's share of their games. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, it would be a bad deal. But if I'm Sony, though, do I want to risk letting Microsoft even have the opportunity to do that? Sega's another one where I can see that one more realistically happening from Microsoft's standpoint. But like we talked about this before, like Atlas is super important to Sony too. That's another exclusive. Basically, every game they make is exclusive to Sony or Nintendo. Like Xbox, those games don't even get released on Xbox. Like Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. You take those away, and fuck, like that fucking sucks. Like yeah, maybe you're
Ex-
killing those IP, but still, you're taking them away from your competitor. So I don't know.
I just don't think it's worth it
It's
because
risky.
then you're if you do that just to take it away from Sony, then the Xbox division will be closed within the next 5 to 7 years. They did that shit.
I don't
Like
think
if
so.
they were to acquire it, like it would
Square's
take at
cheap,
least.
dude. Square's only worth like 5 billion or 6 billion. Like they're cheap, dude.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about your goodwill with the industry will be
Okay.
shot,
Yeah.
and I feel like that will be enough to kill the Xbox brand if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, it would be looked at like we look at Windows. Like we're only going to it because, and I think that, and honestly, I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to be the Windows of the video games, and
Yeah.
I don't want them to be that.
Yeah.
So I hope the guy they don't acquire anybody else. I mean, they're probably going to try,
They
but I
said
hope
they
other
want
people.
to. They said they're not done. Like,
Yeah, but I hope other companies will be smart enough to see like how bad this can get. Um, especially for Sony and Nintendo. Like, I don't know, man. Uh, Xbox
yeah.
Xbox is a boogeyman. Like, okay, now that I'm thinking about it, it is more of a 60-40, but in the other direction now.
Yeah.
But like,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
uh,
That's the reason I'm negative on this is that this deal in and of itself maybe isn't that bad right now, but this like the second they acquire anything else, we're starting to get into really dangerous territory.
because
Um,
I can already see EA like seething at the mouth, all that
Oh,
money.
they're
Like, oh,
frothing at the mouth. Yeah, they're like, "You want to pay us 50 billion for our company when we're worth like 35? Fuck yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go, Xbox, Microsoft." Like, yeah, dude. Oh man, yeah.
yeah, it's,
That one in 2K or Take Two rather are realistic. And
ooh, yeah. If they, the only reason I think the companies would be hesitant to do that is because they might look at sales numbers and be like, well, we sell more on PS4 or PS5 or
yeah,
PlayStation
but you got to
consoles.
think about it this way: when you're acquired, none of that really matters anymore to you. It's whatever Microsoft wants out of you. It's not like it like your goals now don't matter that much. Like you're being acquired. Like you report to somebody now, right? Like Take Two cares about their sales. Obviously, you're going to care about sales after you're acquired, but only insofar that Microsoft cares about them. And if Microsoft doesn't care about them, which they realistically don't, they care about Game Pass. They want to drive Game Pass subscriptions.
Yeah.
So like if that's the case, they don't give a shit. That's my point about them acquiring Square or Sega. As much as they're killing those games like in terms of box sales, they're just gonna put it in Game Pass anyways. So who cares, you know? Um, and maybe they don't even. Maybe the other question is like they could acquire Square not even to take it away from PlayStation. They could let the games continue to release on PlayStation, but they're all on Game Pass now. Like that's still a blow to Sony. At the same time, all the Final Fantasy games on Game Pass, all the Kingdom Hearts games on Game Pass, all the like Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre, everything Square's ever made. Square has an amazing catalog going back to the 90s. Like, dude, like you put all that on Game Pass. Something that Sony has failed to do is foster backwards compatibility with old games, get these old games on their platform, and all of a sudden Xbox has fucking Tactics Ogre on Game Pass. Like, shit. Okay, I might go sign up for Game Pass again, like fuck. I could play like a translated version of fucking Tactics Ogre. Sign me up, dude. Like, so there's many ways you could slice that pie, right? Like it doesn't have to be one specific way. They don't have to take it away. It's so I don't know. It's scary. There's a lot of ways this could go.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They could acquire the company and then just leave the company to their devices. Like, we acquired you. Do what you need to do, still make exclusive games and everything like that or whatever. But they're still getting a piece of that pie.
Yeah, and then be like, but you can do what you want. Exclusive deals with Sony all you want, but all your games are coming on Game Pass. That's our only requirement. And okay, sure, we can do that.
That's insane. Yeah, I think Sony, like, they don't need to do anything. The big people who need to do something is Nintendo. They need to come out and do something. They've been real quiet, and I don't know, man. This is very, the more I think about it, the more scared I get because I really don't want it to become another Windows situation. Like, I really don't want there to be like
Windows is
a
a
Mac
legitimate
computer. Yeah, and they just allow it. People just allow it to happen. Like, no one cares.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Well, here's the other side of Sony, right? Is this would have probably seemed like an insane thing to say last week. But suddenly now, this is an option Sony has on the table, is getting money for them is not hard, right? They can, if they want to go pound for pound with Microsoft, they probably can. Actually, they have more money than people think. Like I think they have like 40 or 50 billion in cash just sitting around. Like, like they're pretty liquid at the moment. But not only that, they could get loans, they could sell IPs, they could go to bigger companies and ask for money, like for funding and shit like that. Like there's multiple ways for a company of their size and their stature to acquire money, right? So they can acquire shit if they want to do that. If that's a route they want to go down and start acquiring things. I don't want to see this, but the other aspect of this too is the idea of Sony getting purchased by somebody else is possibly realistic now. Like, think about this. If you want to compete and you want to buy stuff to kind of match Microsoft and go pound for pound with them, going to another company and being like, look, we need money. We are very valuable. Like, our PlayStation branding is extremely valuable. It makes a ton of money every year, right? Like, they go to like Tencent or something, right? Because Tencent has a fuck ton of money. They could probably buy Sony. They go to Tencent and they're like, hey, we want you to buy us, and then we want to acquire companies, because Tencent does this already, right? Like they already acquire companies all the time. They've been doing this shit for years. We talked about this since we started the show too. So like I think that's a possibility. They could totally be purchased and then all of a sudden start getting in this fucking arms race with Microsoft where they're buying up companies too. And like, so that's the thing with this deal. It is legitimately made like almost anything possible at this point. That like I never would have believed any of these things that we're talking about today. That Sony would buy Square, that Sony would fucking get purchased by Tencent. I would have never uttered these things like last week, like a week ago. But now it's just like, this is so they like Microsoft has just dropped a fucking nuke on the video game industry. Like we're in new territory now, dude. Like this is the biggest thing we've probably ever seen happen in games, like straight up. Besides maybe Microsoft and Sony themselves getting into video games and making consoles, beyond that, like this is one of the biggest things we've ever seen. This is like a tent pole turning moment. We're all gonna remember this when in like 20 years. We're gonna reference this point in time probably when Microsoft bought Activision. So yeah, for Sony, I don't know. I'm going to be interested to see what moves they make. I think they're going to be conservative, personally. I don't think they're going to acquire anything. I think they're going to focus on cheap ways to enhance their value to consumers. I think they're going to funnel a lot of that through Spartacus. That like tier system that we read about, where there was going to be like 3 different tiers, and the third tier was going to be like back compat games and stuff like that you get. Like, it's possible to me now that they get rid of that tier and they just make that the base level tier. Like you just get a whole library of old games that you can play backwards compatibility on your fucking PS5, like by default, if you subscribe.
Yeah, I think Sony is too dependent on their. I mean, their brand is super fucking powerful. So it's almost like, you know what? I'm thinking, and I have a lot of stuff to say, but it's just so much flooding through my brain.
Hey, go for it.
When you were talking about other companies acquiring it, what's one company that I always compare Sony to in the gaming industry? Apple.
Yeah.
I think it's a strong possibility that Apple may acquire them. Like, or they may go to Apple and be like, hey, we need some cash flow. Like, if you look at the way Sony is structured, their infrastructure, everything is kind of like through us, like Apple is. Everything is through us. Everything is through Apple. The way you buy a PlayStation 5 now is through us. The way you get upgrades and everything of that, or
you got to buy this proprietary shit for our our peripherals and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I could see it. Apple has wanted to get into gaming, dude. They've always wanted to get into gaming. They just never had a good way in.
And this can be their way in. This can be their number one way in. And
another company that wants in and has a fuck ton of money and also is kind of proprietary and does everything themselves, Amazon.
Oh fuck! Don't say
man.
that.
I mean,
holy shit!
You open that door to me. It's in my brain. So.
Oh no! Don't do that. No.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I think Sony's powerful enough to stave all this off, right? But
they are. But you know what? This may be. I think Microsoft may be that necessary evil to jumpstart the industry back. Because, I mean, we were talking about a couple of months ago how everyone's just complacent right now. Like, no one's trying to do anything. And I think this competition, I'm just trying to be real positive, because if I focus on negative, it's going to get real dark.
Yeah.
I think this nuke that they dropped is a fresh slate. Like, this could be the next golden era of gaming, depending on how everything goes. Because I think people are going to be like, not only, you got to look at it too from the top down. This will be the first time trickle down economics would probably work, right? Everyone will be working their hardest to make the best and brightest game so that they can probably get acquired by somebody. Like, oh man, look at this wonderful game that I made. I'm Square Enix and I made the best fucking Final Fantasy ever. And that would be on the table to get bought by Sony or somebody like that. And you got all these other third-party companies and third-party publishers making the very best possible games they can make to look really pretty and nice for Microsoft or Sony or whatever the fuck. Or even Sony themselves looking pretty for, Amazon or fucking Apple. I mean, hell, even though I don't think they have as much money, but they can possibly get up there. I mean, what if Unreal decides to make themselves a fucking console now?
Epic. Yeah, Epic.
Yeah, or Epic. Yeah. What if they decide to make a console? Like, they have the technology,
Yeah, we have the technology.
We don't have technology.
Yeah.
We can't rebuild them. I mean, that's another thing we're not considering here too. Like, what if they just other companies decide to get into the console market again? Like that's how this gaming industry started anyway. Just random people popping up and like, hey,
Mm,
I'm gonna make a console and we're gonna see what sticks or not. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's very fucking scary right now. It's exciting and scary at the same time. Um, it's just too much money flowing around for my liking right now.
Well, you're right. I mean, there is some positivity, right? We were talking about Blizzard. Maybe this is like the panacea that Blizzard needs to make them a great company again, right? And that's true for Activision as well. Um, and then suddenly you take that competition out of the space for third parties. There's a vacuum now in the third party arena that, needs to be filled, right? Like Activision was huge. Like they were the biggest guy out. They were the biggest player in the third party space, right? Somebody's going to need to rise to that occasion and like kind of fill that void. And whether that's multiple companies all kind of doing better and making better games and making more games suddenly, then yeah, sure, then that's there. That could happen, or maybe EA or Take Two or somebody rises up and becomes one of the becomes the biggest player. I mean, EA is there by default right now, but like I could see that too, and there is a possibility of that this is like a kind of kick in the ass for everybody that like, oh shit, there's maybe some opportunity here, like so.
Yeah,
And that always drives innovation, I think, is that. So but the problem is, I think economists would argue that this deal is the opposite of that, is that monopolization or like consolidation almost never drives innovation in an
yeah.
industry. So there's that side of it as well. But I'm with you. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be like super negative the whole time. So I don't know. We'll see what comes of that side of it. But um, Microsoft, we've talked about a lot with them. Um, what do you think of? So, do you think I haven't seen this, but how do you feel about Phil Spencer after all this? Because he's now one of the most powerful men in video games. Straight up, he has been named the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. Like he is, all these companies under their umbrella report directly to him. Like straight up, he is literally one of the most powerful men in
Yeah.
video games.
Um. So it's one of those things where I can see someone setting up. So like you got this kingdom, right? And you got this king.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the best fucking king ever. He fought wars and all this shit, and he set up the kingdom to be exactly the way he wanted it to be, and for
Mm-hmm.
for his citizens to thrive within their kingdom, and everything of that nature. And he's like, yes, I finally acquired it. I can die in peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And then his fucking shit son comes up next to him and takes a hold of the kingdom. Is like, okay, that was my father, but I can see what ways I can, profit more off the kingdom or whatever. And he just like he's just terrible to to the citizens and everything of that nature. But he has all this power and there's no one to stop him. Right? That's how I feel about Phil Spencer and his act and
Mm-hmm.
his
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Microsoft Gaming. I feel like he has the very best intentions. uh he wants to make, obviously he wants to make money, obviously, but he's a gamer himself. He wants to game, he wants to do all this stuff, he wants to all these companies to make really good games. He's probably I'm pretty sure, like, even when because I keep going to Ninja Theory because that game they made was really fucking terrible. But I'm pretty sure he was like, "Hey, man, just push it out. Like, we can do what we need to do, man. Just do what you
Mm-hmm.
got to do." Like, I'm pretty sure he is that type of boss, right?
Yeah.
I can just see a Don Matrick coming after Phil Spencer and be like, now that Phil Spencer's out, I can really acquire the money that we need.
Everybody gets
He man,
microtransactions. Yeah.
yeah, he man. But that's what I'm scared of. I'm not scared of him. I'm scared of the person next up
Mm,
who will acquire Microsoft Gaming after him.
yeah.
Right now, I feel like he has a lot of clout. No one can really touch him. Even the CEO of Microsoft will himself will be really stupid to fire Phil Spencer over something. Even if
That'll
he
never
wants more
happen.
money.
There's no way.
Yeah,
They have invested
yeah,
so much in their gaming division now. I think Phil Spencer is he's there till he leaves.
Yeah, exactly. But my question is, and I mean, maybe this is years, and this is me being a pessimist. Sometime years later down the line, I can just see this turning real bad. And what if he just ups and decides he wants to retire, like in the next 3 years? He's like,
Yep.
I'm done.
My
I
job
don't
is
really
done.
want
He's
to do
like
it.
Thanos, like
Yeah,
Thanos at the end of Infinity War. He's just like, he's like, he's got the Infinity Gauntlet off. He can't even fucking get it off. Like
and and,
yeah.
and granted, right? Like Doug Bowser, he didn't do anything bad, but the moves Nintendo is making is pretty weird, right? It's
Mhm.
not like Reggie, right? Like, and Reggie was making some questionable moves too for Nintendo, but we kind of trusted Reggie in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Hey man, Reggie's
Um,
Reggie, dude. Doug
yeah,
Bowser's no
Reggie.
Reggie.
Yeah, he's not. He Doug Bowser is not Reggie. And my thing is, I don't want us to. I really want the next CEO to be better than Phil Spencer in a way. Like, I really think the gaming industry as a whole, and this is, I'll be more positive now. On the positive sense, I feel like the gaming industry and the executives and the CEOs who aren't into gaming see the power of having an actual, because he used to be a developer too, right? Phil Spencer, I believe he used to be a
Yeah, I
developer.
think so.
Not
But
only
he's always been a gamer though.
yeah, he's always been a gamer, and I believe he used to be a developer. And they see the power in not just getting any old regular businessman to run the division, but actually getting someone who's invested into it as a hobby, as a culture, and everything of that nature. And I feel like other companies, Sony, Nintendo, um, and even like the third party companies, a lot of these are still ran by suits.
They don't have
Uh,
that. Yeah, dude. Doug Bowser, like he's got the voice and the face from Nintendo, but he doesn't feel like a gamer to me. And
yeah,
Jim Ryan, I mean, it's a joke. Like they're literally trying to like send out propaganda that, oh yeah, he games. Yeah, he's on Twitch streaming. There isn't somebody behind the camera playing the game for him. No, he's totally a gamer. He loves Ratchet and Clank. Like it's a fucking
Exactly, right. But I feel like in a positive sense, other companies will see like, wow, this really Microsoft really turned it around because they had an actual person in the culture. Like they had
Mhm.
someone who knew video games, who made video games, who understands how this shit works because they not only they play it, they make them, they made them, and they weren't a suit. They were they didn't necessarily come from the bottom, but they were the worker, and now they're the CEO, and they understand how shit works. So
Mhm.
that's the positive aspect I can look at this is um like even we don't have a suit running the game awards. We have fucking
Keeley, yeah,
what's
Jeff
his
Keeley.
yeah, Jeff Keeley running the game awards and stuff like that. Like the industry is really getting taken over by people who were old developers who are just so threaded into the culture that they might as well have made a video game anyway. Um and I think the reason why some of these other companies aren't really getting it too well is because they don't have that Phil Spencer effect, right? They don't have the Reggie effect, who probably didn't really play video games like that until he got into Nintendo, or
Yeah.
like Ottawa, right before he died. We all know that he was a gamer, like he loved Nintendo's products and
Mhm.
everything of that nature.
Yeah.
Um, so it just seems like when the company is ran by a CEO that knows video games, it runs a lot better. And I think Phil Spencer is a perfect example of that. And hopefully, other companies will take note and they push up people who were once developers. You know, they're now the CEOs and things of that nature. So that's the one. That's my perception of Phil Spencer. I think his overall like aura and drive to make video games better. And one thing, he was like never negative on other companies. Like he always was like congratulating other people for their
Mhm.
successful launches and shit like that. Cause he even said he even took pictures like, oh yeah, I have a Switch and I have a PS5, y'all. Like I love the games just as much as y'all. So my perception of him is like overall positive. And I think from a business aspect as well is positive because like I said, his influence can affect other companies' decisions to who they appoint to be CEOs. Like the time of Don Matrix and Bobby Kotick is dead now in video games. Like you need to actually acquire somebody who knows the culture.
Yeah, so you made some good points there. I'm like a lot more negative about Phil right now, I think.
Yeah,
But what you did say does resonate with me for sure. Like I do still genuinely believe he's authentic. Like he is a gamer. I like that hasn't been changed for me. I think what has changed though is I think a lot of the rhetoric he's been saying for years now of like we want you to be able to play your games anywhere. We want you, everybody has access to games. We want to build more access to games. I think all that suddenly is out the window in the last couple of years to me. Like it's like total bullshit now. Like because you're like buying these companies and then you're making the games fucking exclusive to your platform. Like that's not you're not trying to make games accessible. You're trying to like win the console war now. Like I mean, obviously you want to make money as a company, but at the same time, if that's what your rhetoric was like, I don't believe you anymore. Like so some of his authenticity has been hurt by this deal for me because I mean, he was part of the negotiations here. Like he was an integral reason that this happened. There's no way this happens without Phil Spencer to me. So, like, don't say that Microsoft. Oh, this is Microsoft. No, Phil Spencer was part of this. So I don't know. It's he he feels like somebody talking out of both sides of his mouth a little bit to me now because like dude if you go online and look at this on Twitter right there's like a really significant split between people who are upset about this deal and are just like worshiping Phil Spencer's fucking dick. Like there are so many people who are like, "We love you, Phil. We love Phil. Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, go Microsoft. Yeah, fucking like all these like Xbox fanboys. Like he has created this almost like cult following, I think. And it's almost like brilliant in the way it's been executed, right? He spent so many years as the underdog like for his first like 6-7 years he's the fucking underdog after Don Matrick like fucked everything up. He comes in and he's like got this shitty console, no good first party games, like nobody believes in Xbox anymore. And then Phil over the years has slowly but surely been building up his own reputation, building up Xbox's reputation, creating value for customers in real ways with things like Game Pass. And then he starts throwing the fucking haymakers. And like all the acquisitions in 2018 was your first sign that Phil was coming to play, right? That was one thing. Those were individual studios, individual developers for the most part. They weren't big acquisitions. They were kind of getting the playing field more even with Sony, right? But then Bethesda, I think that should have been more of an alarm bell than it probably was at the time. I think for most of us that okay, we're going into because I think I said this at the time, like they were butting up against the line of what I think is an acceptable acquisition for a platform holder, and they have now blown over that line, destroyed the line. It's like the line never even existed. Like they like this acquisition is so far beyond the pale of where I thought the line was that it's like I don't know at this point. So to me, I don't know. I like part of me trusts Phil that he's gonna guide these studios in the right way, but at the same time, I am a little reticent to trust him because of what I just said. That
yeah,
a lot of what he said in the past is just bullshit now. Like it
yeah. At
has
the
no
end of the
meaning.
day,
Like
he's still a CEO. Like he still
right.
needs to run a company and everything of that nature. So
Hmm.
I definitely understand it.
Yeah. So um okay, Montreal. I think we've covered really a lot of the big stuff that I wanted to cover. Are there any aspects here that we didn't get to that you would like to discuss?
All right, yeah, I did have one thing to say. I am kind of upset, which I actually I'm sorry that we forgot to mention it earlier, but I am upset with Phil Spencer as far as his reception of they were dedicated to making better games and they didn't. Instead, they just bought everything. Now they're just buying everything because they
Hmm.
can't compete with Sony's quality of gaming or their caliber of gaming and even Nintendo's caliber of quality games. It seems like they can't compete right now. So their only option is just to buy everything.
By the quality, right? Well, if you think about it, Microsoft, honestly, historically, has kind of always been that way, right? Like, dude, they bought Halo. Like, Halo was not an internally made game. right? Like they
Yeah.
bought Bungie after that came out. They bought Mass Effect as a third party game. They've bought I'm trying to think Gears like yeah, Gears wasn't theirs either. Like that's not an internal studio. Like Epic's not wasn't theirs, right? Like Epic made those games. So they've always kind of had a history of not making great games internally, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And one can argue, well, Microsoft was still trying to get their on their foot, get their feet out, of course. And one can argue that Sony was doing the same thing. They didn't buy a lot of these studios until after these games were made, like after the God of War was made. Then they were like, okay, I'm gonna buy Santa Monica Studios or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I guess it's the same on both sides, but it just seems like after the 360 era, they just really haven't had any good hits lately as far as like just trying to get third part or first party games out. During 360 era, there were a whole bunch of first party games for them.
Mm-hmm.
Even from third party studios that they didn't buy, they still had deals with them that they made. It seems like the one era, the Xbox One era, and even this era for Xbox Series X, they're just having a hard time getting these games out.
Mm.
And like they have a game, an IP that legitimately everybody wants. Like even PlayStation people talk about this IP to this day, and that's Fable. And they have not dropped a
Mm.
Fable game.
Mm-hmm.
That's to
Yeah.
me, that's one of their most powerful ace in the hole IPs besides Halo. Like that to me carries more weight than Halo to a
Yeah.
lot of other people. Because a
Yeah.
lot of people didn't play fucking Halo when they first touched the OG Xbox. A lot of people played Fable, and I just know a lot of PlayStation fanboys who be like, man, you know what? If they dropped Fable right now, I would buy it. I won't buy a Series X, but I definitely buy a Series S just to play Fable.
Yeah, they've
So
really flubbed it with that franchise, haven't they? Over the
yep,
last 15 years or 10 years. Cuz yeah, Fable is a big one. That's like it's kind of weird that that game is as big as it is. Like when I think about that game in the period of time it came out, the first and second one really. Fable 3 I don't think was super well received, but um like when you think about those games, like yeah, people love Fable. Like they really genuinely love Fable. And I do think that's one of their biggest IPs that they definitely need to figure that out. This new Fable game needs to be good, which is probably why we've seen nothing of it and barely heard anything about it because I think they're
yeah,
really trying to incubate it and I think they want Fable to come back bigger and better than it's ever been,
yeah,
and really hit with a splash. I will say though, to be fair to Microsoft here, because like you were saying about Sony, right? Sony had their period of acquisitions. They did this in the late PS2, early PS3 generations, right? They acquired a ton of studios at that period of time. And that is when they didn't have a ton of internal teams, that were making great games. They didn't. Like PlayStation's like first party lineup wasn't inherently great in the PS1 and PS2 eras. They just had a fuck ton of third party support that the other companies didn't really have. They had like they
yep.
got in the PlayStation 1 generation, they were the JRPG machine. Like the N64 had like fucking no JRPGs on it. Like it was a joke.
Well,
Um,
look at their two IPs, one of their two biggest IPs, or what we consider at the time one of their two biggest IPs, which was Crash and Spyro. They don't even
yeah,
own those IPs
right.
because they
Yep.
didn't own the studio, and the studio I think sold the IP to Activision, and then Activision got those IPs.
Yeah, it was Naughty
Uh,
Dog that had Crash and then
and then Insomniac had Spyro.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so when you look at those, like they ended up buying those studios though, and they incubated them and like really focused them on quality and allowed them to grow and kind of flourish into what they are now, which is some of the best studios in the world. I think Microsoft, we kind of need to give Microsoft a little bit more time to do the same thing. They've only started acquiring teams like 3 or 4 years ago. So that's not enough time for these teams to really become what Sony has.
Yeah,
So I think that's the reality we're looking at is we're probably going to have to wait till next generation to really see what becomes of all these acquisitions, like what really comes out of it. I think this generation is really important for Xbox. Clearly, they're really going all in. They're moving their chips all into the table. But in terms of the game studios, that's what Sony's got to worry about is Xbox at some point may be able to match their quality and then they might even be able to exceed the quantity as well with that same level of quality. And if that happens, Sony's in big trouble because their one advantage is out the window at that point. So,
Yep, exactly.
cool. All right.
Well, that's really all I had though for that. Like, it really was sticking out in my mind that I really wanted Xbox to knock it out the park. But I mean, you made good points too, which kind of like toned me down because you're right. They just started acquiring studios, which I completely forgot that Sony was acquiring all their studios like early PS2 or late PS2, mid PS2, early PS3 era. Whereas with Microsoft, they really weren't acquiring any studios during 360 era, and they just started acquiring studios. So that's probably why they don't have the caliber of games that I thought they were kind of promising to us to kind of catch up with Sony. But I still don't like the buying of just companies, but they do need the studios. So I mean, obviously companies are way more expensive than they were 15, 20 years ago. So that's why instead of millions, it's billions now. And Sony was kind of lucky when they got the game industry kind of young, and these studios are worth probably not even 5 million at the time, so they had the cash flow to kind of throw this around.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Do you want to talk about Nintendo at all? Do you really think there's anything they got to do? Do they need to respond? I don't really
they're
think
in
they
a
even
whole.
can they?
They're in a whole different world on their own, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They're honestly, I can't see a world without Nintendo, and I think the gaming industry knows that. I think even Microsoft knows that shit.
Yeah.
So, they're safe. Sony, however, they're not.
They're in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Microsoft's got that sniper rifle, and they're trying to find Sony's head right now. That's what it feels like. So, but okay. Well, in that case, I think we covered this pretty well for the most part. If we did not get any questions on this week, but if you guys have any thoughts you would like to send us, or any questions that we didn't cover, any pieces of this that we didn't cover, like I said at the top, please contact us at The Players Take on Twitter, or you can send us an email to theplayerstake01@gmail.com. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up the show here. So if you like this episode, please like the episode, review the show, subscribe to the show on whatever feed you're listening to it on, and please share it with your friends. If you'd like to interact with us on Twitter, you can do so at iTrap4the Hokage for Montrell. That is the number 4, not the word. I'm at Thunder01, and like I said, the show is at The Players Take. And yeah, that's going to be it for us, guys. We had this was a fun episode, but we will be back to more normal news next week, hopefully, unless Microsoft blows our minds again, or maybe Sony blows our minds. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks. So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye.